Okay, I want to address the first lesson in the second unit, which is federalism, which is ultimately taking a look at the division of power amongst the federal government and the states and the different relationships they've had, more importantly, how they work together and the different styles they have in the past and continue to work together now. Now, before we go any further, I also have posted the video regarding Federalist 51. Remember, all those founding documents, your Declaration of Independence, your Articles of Confederation, your Fed 10, your Brutus 1, now Federalist 51, all those are critical for you to understand um, what they stand for and a few specifics on each because you're going to have to reference them on future exams in this class, but more importantly on the final exam for the AP examination. So check out the YouTube video. You also have the analytical worksheet paper that does it, but heads up, it's all about checks and balances and separating powers, which is kind of what we're going to discuss today a little bit. Now, as of right now, the ratification debate can be summarized basically by saying the Federalist, the F stands for, and the A in Anti-Federalist stands for against. Now, what the Anti-Federalists were concerned about, and there was a lot of things, and that's why Brutus number 1 is important for you to understand and be able to cite and be able to use it as reasoning for an argument, is they were upset about the power structure, okay? That in this new proposed constitution that the central government was ultimately too powerful as well. And what Federalist 51 intended to do was to calm those nerves, okay? And first of all, Madison kind of starts it off by basically agreeing with that. Like, hey, listen, we understand that it's human nature to increase one's power, but understand this, that if men were angels, then no government would be needed. And if angels rule, then, once again, no government would be needed. But guess what? Men are not angels, and angels don't rule. So we're going to need some specific things put in place to curb this nature of increasing one's powers. And what does he come to is this idea of separating the major powers of your government. So we have one branch that is the legislative branch, makes laws. Another branch, executive branch, which will enforce them, and judicial, which will interpret or judge different laws. So you got the three major powerful powers all separated amongst branches. And not only that, he begins to discuss this idea of checks and balances, how one branch can stop another branch from doing something, right? Like an internal check or an internal way to stop an action from taking place, or a safety net just in case one branch doesn't get too powerful. So we want to go back to that Federalist 51. It's important. But federalism, and I'm going to ask for the definition, is what it says. It's the division or sharing of power between the central, and our explanation would be the federal government, and the regional and state governments. All right. So how do we divide power amongst our U.S. federal government and the state governments? Now, many different ways to explain it, but this graphic works the best. If it is blue and it's to the left-hand side, okay, blue, and I'm not talking about this middle area here. I'm just talking about right here. The Constitution gives those powers specifically to the federal government. We call those enumerated powers, expressed powers. You can, and what it means is this: you can physically find them in the Constitution, and you can physically find the words that say only the federal government has these laws. Now, if it's on the right-hand side in the gray or silver, what you want to think of is these are state powers, but what it will be referred to as is reserve powers. These powers are reserved for the states. And so the Constitution specifically grants these powers right here for the states. If they don't, the 10th Amendment will, which we'll talk about here in a second. In the middle, concurrent, which is exactly how you'll see it for the exam. These are shared powers. So this idea of collecting taxes, both the federal government and state governments can do that. They both can regulate banks and establish and administer judiciary and borrow money and provide for the common good, whatever that means, and make and enforce laws. Now, let me just say this to you. One of the big problems that we've ran into in the past is this: interstate versus intrastate. Interstate means that you get to control trade between two or more states. Intrastate means that you get to control trade within that particular state. So just be aware of that. Now, some couple key ideas as far as federalism goes. Understand the supremacy clause. We have that. So we have that idea, the ladder of laws, the chain of command. U.S. Constitution up top, federal laws and treaties. Number 2, state constitutions. 3, state laws and local. So it's a chain of command. It's a chain of command. And we've talked about that before. And remember that it runs top down. Most powerful, least powerful. All right? Another thing that you're going to run into is this idea with when you're talking about federalism is the 10th Amendment. I cannot stress this enough, okay? The states love the 10th Amendment, okay? Once again, let me say it again. The states love the 10th Amendment because I'm just going to say this. What the 10th Amendment says is virtually this. If the power or rule or regulation or topic is not in the Constitution, so once again, it is not mentioned in the Constitution, then it means it automatically goes to the states. They get to determine it. They get to run it. So when you're looking at this like power to the states and states' rights, federal government, they love the 10th Amendment because the 10th Amendment says, hey, if it's not in the Constitution or it's not mentioned, we control it. We, the states, control it. And guess what? There's not a lot of mention of a lot of different ideas in the Constitution. So the states are going to have quite a few things on their hands that they do get to control. So states love the 10th Amendment. Once again, if it's not in the Constitution, it falls to the states. The other thing that is going to come with federalism is this idea of full faith and credit. And let me just try to paraphrase it like this. Full faith and credit will mean that states will respect the rules and judicial proceedings of other states, okay, or even laws as well. Now, what I mean by that is this. A classic example would be this. We live in Illinois, all right, and you live in Illinois. Let's say it's later on down in life, and you meet the person that you want to marry. So you make all these plans to get married, then you finally like, you know what, we should just go to Nevada and go to Las Vegas and just get married there. So you buy a plane ticket, you fly all the way to Nevada, you get married in Las Vegas, and you come back. Now, what full faith and credit means is that Illinois will accept that marriage as valid. It's a legal proceeding that took place in Nevada. They've agreed to accept legal proceedings of other states. And so therefore, it's a valid marriage. It's not like you come back to Illinois and the governor is going to be like, nope, you're not married. You got to get married within the territory. No. Same thing goes for like criminals who maybe go, across states in a crime spree. If someone conducts a robbery in Illinois and moves out west and finally is caught in California, and it's discovered that they were doing all these robberies, including the one that was in Illinois, states sometimes work together to not only try those criminals like in a California court, like we're going to try you in a California court, but we're also going to send you back to Illinois to also, stand trial for the crime that you committed in Illinois. So they kind of share that as well. So please understand that too. And also the one that I always use is you can't escape some sort of judicial penalty by moving to a different state. So if I was arrested for robbing some sort of store and I had a trial and it was determined, that I was found guilty, I just can't be like, guess what? Moving to Iowa, I'm fine. No. Iowa would return me back and I'm going to jail. So full faith and credit. States respecting the laws, legislations, judicial proceedings of other states. Now, types of federalisms, what does it look like? More importantly, what is the relationship? There's 3 different ones you need to know. Well, I've added actually a 4th. Dual, cooperative, I added coercive, and then new. These are the 3 that I've seen on the exam, so that's why I put them there, but I'll explain coercive here in a second. All right, what dual federalism means in its nickname is layer cake is this. If you look at a layer cake, defined layers on a cake, what it means is there's no sharing of powers whatsoever. Here are the federal government's powers, here are the state government powers, and here are the local powers. We don't share. We are specifically divided from each other, and there's no sharing of information. There's no sharing of finances. There's no sharing of anything. This is my territory. I control this, and this is my territory, and I control this, and this is my territory, and I control this. That's dual federalism. Or it looks like you're in a gun duel. You're against each other. Look into that. The other one that kind of is also mentioned is cooperative federalism, like marble cake federalism, where, as you see, there's not so much clearly defined levels that the cake flavors, if you will, run all throughout the cake. So what does that mean? It means that your national government, your states, and even your local governments are going to cooperate on some policy. Okay, so that's cooperative, i.e., the root word cooperation. I think it applies here. Moving on. You might have to be able to determine the difference between the two, so I'll just kind of leave it here for a second so you can just take a look at what layer cake federalism is compared to cooperative. But here's something you might see. We're just going to call it in a different term. Coercive federalism basically means that the federal government is going to coerce or make the states do a particular thing. Now, there's two different ways they can do it, all right? Now, they call it the stick or they call it the carrot. I've heard it called stick and carrot. What the stick is it is what we would call it in this class is it's a mandate, okay? That's what we call it, a mandate. And what a mandate is you will do this or else. Or I've got a stick in my hand. If you don't do this, I'm going to hit you with it until you do it, It's kind of like the mean person way of doing it. But once again, a mandate. You will do this, states, or else. And what's an example of that? We'll go to any public facility, and you're going to notice that it is accommodated for people that might be in wheelchairs, all right? That is a specific mandate from the federal government to the states that they will and must build their public facilities so that people with disabilities are able to use their facilities. The other one here is a carrot, where it says the national government persuades with incentives. We call incentives grants. And what a grant is money. And so here it is. Here's state, here you go, here's a little bit of money. If we got some money over here, would you like it? Oh, you would? Okay, well, guess what? We need you to do this for this money. So coercive, getting a state to do what you want it to do. Moving on, last one. This is going to be our last slide, and this is the newest one. What new federalism is basically, it says aims to give more power to. Okay, here's what it does. The federal government says, virtually in new federalism, is, yeah, it was once our program, but now we're going to give it to you, states. You guys control this program. Or, hey, this was once our domain or power. Well, guess what? We're going to turn it over to you, states. You guys take hold of it. We call that devolution. Very fancy term for just basically saying that the federal government is passing on responsibility to the states. So maybe in your family must, like my family, when I grew to be like, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade, my dad came to me one day and said, hey, I used to mow the lawn, but now you're old enough, you're doing it. And so it was up to me. I was able to mow the lawn however I wanted to, despite my gripes and complaints. Now, I will tell you, why do they do this? Why do they do this? All right, why turn over powers or programs to the states? Because what the federal government has when they do that is 50 different laboratories to solve a problem, okay? 50 different laboratories to solve a problem. Now look at, like, for example, like the coronavirus. What's the best way to combat the coronavirus? If you turn it over to the states, then virtually what you're doing is you're allowing each state to create its own program to control the outbreak. And at the end of the day, the objective or ideal situation would be that one state does a really good job, and it's our best lab. And so guess what? We're going to copy that state, and we're going to mandate that all other states do it. So sometimes they'll do it. Sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes the federal government will turn over the states. And we got 50 different labs running at once. Who's got the best results? And we're going to go with those results. So that's kind of what we're talking about with federalism moving forward. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to put some questions on AP Classroom. So, do those. I think those are very valid and very good. And then we'll go from there. All right. So good to see you. And I will be talking to you soon. And if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can always contact me. Take care.